welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. We close out our look at Stan Lee's reimagining of the DC Universe with this one. Last time, we took a look at Wonder Woman, where instead of being a character themed around truth, sisterhood, and compassion that is often mischaracterized by ignorant writers, she is a Peruvian activist who stumbled upon an Incan staff that gave her superpowers to kill a demon. Actually, given that whole mischaracterization thing, that's pretty consistent. There sadly wasn't much else to say about her. Hell, despite both Superman and Batman getting full-on cameos from Reverend Harold P. Satan in their origin stories, Wendy just happened to kill the demon with his church by sheer coincidence. So let's bring our final look at the Stan Lee reimaginings for this month out there by digging into, just imagine, Stan Lee creating The Flash.
Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
I love this cover. Despite the fact that it's doing the multiple panels depicting stuff from inside the book without context thing that the Superman and Wonder Woman covers were doing, I think what makes this one work so well is the color. The other ones really washed out the colors so as to make the panels almost indistinguishable from anything else happening, but here they're in full color and in perfect contrast. What helps with that is the rainbow behind this version of the Flash. Not sure why an all-white suit would create a rainbow streak, but I'm not complaining. Her costume, then, is kind of iffy, since it's just white with flared pants and the Power Rangers helmet. I admit it's unique, it's not what I would think of off the top of my head with that name. We open in some high-tech facility where we see this woman, Evil Von Evil Lady, because it's a comic book, you don't show off your legs in a kick-ass black dress with a button top unless you're evil, is giving orders. Her name is Andrea Zakara, although when men feast their eyes on her, the last thing they care about is her name. First, they usually ask her if she's getting quality insurance. She informs her Dark City reject minions that they're going to perform another test. But my lady Zakara, if I may speak, all the others died during the tests.
No matter, they died for stealth.
Yeah, about that, the Union has been talking, and we don't think that movie is worth dying for.
Nonsense! Stealth shall be as beloved as Short Circuit.
And also, because she's evil, she orders the dude who questioned her to be the next test subject, having her mustachioed henchman Zorgol threaten him to get inside. What's sad is that with the bald head and that particular kind of mustache, he actually looks like Wayne Williams from the Batman comic. And thus he goes inside the chamber and science happens.
It's working! He's vanished! We have sent him back through time!
Impressive, especially without possessing the Rassilon imprimatur. And 50 gajillion nerd points if you actually get that reference. The guy reappears inside the, well, time machine, I guess.
I've done it! The world will be ours!
Now make it into a phone booth and then model our entire society after the wild stallions. But then the rather extra crispy corpse of the henchman falls out of the capsule.
Not again! Not again! This is like the 5th week in a row. I'm so sick of having beef jerky.
She says they can't proceed without the Seeker, and that one of them shall die each day until the Seeker is found. You know, as a boss, you should be encouraging your employees. This is just gonna make a hostile work environment, and productivity is gonna go in the toilet. We cut over to a college campus, where our main character, Mary Maxwell, is reading a comic book as her friends go up to her.
I see you're still into those ditzy comic books. To you, they're comics. To me, they're my heart's desire.
I'm gonna marry this copy of Blood Gun. I'd give anything to live like a superheroine, to have adventure, thrills, excitement, dead love interests, editorial mandates, my character killed off in a company-wide crossover event, the fat chance living with my workaholic scientist father. I love my dad, but our life is totally dull city. I mean, he's an astronomer. He doesn't work with radiation at all. How am I supposed to develop superpowers without radiation? One of her friends suggests that a nearby black car has been following her, but she laughs it off while going home. Once there, she meets up with her dad. Hi, Pop. Still babysitting all your scientific things and stuff? Yeah, but I've abandoned the squirrel torpedo. Just couldn't get the weight ratio to work right. Her scientist dad isn't really listening to her, and she knows that, just laying back and reading her comics. Thank God I've got Wonder Woman to read about. Wait, does that mean that the National Exposer from last time is printing a Wonder Woman comic now? It's kind of weird if they don't know her origin. Maybe they'll make her an Amazon with a lasso of truth or something. Wouldn't that be silly? However, it seems the black car from earlier was indeed following her, and out popped the bald henchman. Fortunately, Scientist Dad hears an alarm as they approach. Dad, what was that noise? What's happening? Can't explain now. Every second counts. I decided to never tell you about this so you would be totally unprepared for it and distract me when every second counts. Yeah, as you might have noticed, I'm not a good father. The house is booby-trapped, even having a hydraulic lawn that tilts up vertically to keep his pursuers from getting in close. For years I told those kids to stay off the lawn, and now I've got the perfect weapon for it! Scientist Dad pulls Mary along to their car while Zorgle chases after, ripping through the place with his bare hands. They'll never escape in that lumbering old family car!
Oh no, they've got a Chevy. They're so dependable.
And indeed, it looks like the henchmen are closing in, but fortunately, Scientist Dad has been busy, installing a few upgrades into the station wagon. Just the auxiliary second stage rockets kicking in. Just wait until we hit 88 miles per hour, sweetie! We cut over to the Church of Eternal Empowerment doing what they've done in every issue so far. Stand around speaking cryptically. To paraphrase Gertrude Stein, a church is a church is a church. But would she have said that about the Church of Eternal Empowerment? Well, technically speaking, it is still a church. I mean, housing an evil cult doesn't mean that the classification is undone. The good Reverend Dark is speaking to his congregation. I say unto you, power is all. Power is the ultimate goal. Ye who follow me shall have power eternal. In fact, one could say we had unlimited power. But that would just be silly. We then cut over to Innisfall, Australia, where our heroes have gone. Dad, what do you fear so much that we had to flee to the other side of the world? You wouldn't tell me on the plane ride because you were afraid someone might overhear. Well, you know how rude it is to speak so loudly on a plane. I didn't want to disturb the other passengers. Scientist Dad is setting up an alarm system in the house they're staying at and explains who this stealth is. It stands for Special Team of Espionage Agents licensed to target and hit. There's nothing more nefarious than an evil organization whose goal is to hit people. Also, it doesn't matter if it's Stan Lee or just DC writers in general. Gotta have an evil secret organization with a goofy acronym. Also, who exactly licensed them to target and hit? Anyway, Stealth wanted help with their time travel research, and he was given the code name Seeker. After he found out what their goal was, they threatened to kill Mary if he left. They planned to commit monstrous crimes in the past, then travel to the future where they'd be safe.
That is not how time travel works.
However, the time travel was too strenuous for the human body and killed anyone who attempted it. For once, however, Stan remembers scientists have specializations and are not just a grab bag of skills, so Mary points out that her dad's specialty is genetics. Stealth wanted him to modify the DNA of its henchmen to make them able to withstand the stresses of time travel. Of course, this specialization thing doesn't explain how he installed hydraulic pistons underneath his lawn and a full electrical alarm system, but whatever. Speaking of, they spot Zorgle and the goons outside, having tracked our heroes, and they've all switched to their beachwear. Which is kind of hilarious, because what evil people will swap out their clothes for the weather? They make another run for it to their boat, Zorgle swearing to pursue, And Mary's father activates a bomb under the dock that knocks Zorgle on his ass. Nothing like a geneticist to know about remote detonators. By the by, I just realized that Mary's actually taking all this news pretty well. Admittedly, running for your life like this would probably eliminate some doubts, but I think I'd tilt my head if my dad explained to me that the evil organization after him wanted help with time travel experiments. In any case, they ride into some weird green fog, even the water starting to turn a more greenish color. The water starts turning choppy and Mary falls off into it, which is full of dead fish, so you know this water can only result in good. Her father is able to get her out of the water, though she comes out tinted green. Just imagine Stan Lee creating She-Hulk? The color starts to fade, and Mary decides to get some rest while the fog starts lifting. After a series of flights to try to lose their pursuers, they arrive in Los Angeles, because of course it's LA. Heaven forbid all these superheroes start showing up in completely different locations. Whatever happened to her in the water, it basically drained her so that she's listless and exhausted all the time. They set up a home for themselves, hoping Stealth will think they're staying at sea for a while. Trying to come up with a solution for her need for energy, Maxwell hits upon the idea that a hummingbird's wings are the fastest moving things in nature. Geneticist, explosives expert, and now zoologist, I guess. Honey, if I were to give you the smallest bit of a hummingbird's DNA... What?
We've tried everything else, Dad, so why not?
No, I don't think you have! What the hell? Little known fact, hummingbird DNA is a green liquid.
Of course! Don't you know anything about science?
While Maxwell intended to only inject a tiny bit into her, there are suddenly a bunch of bullets that hit him in the back, forcing the needle straight into her arm and injecting the full dose. Oh, and by the way, they opened fire before they burst down the door, as we see them kicking it in on the next panel. So they just wasted a bunch of bullets and through sheer luck managed to hit him. Now to find his notes and finish our time travel project. What the hell? You were ordered to bring him in alive! You have no guarantee he took any notes at all, and no guarantee he had them with him. Hell, why would he still have notes? He would have destroyed them to prevent you guys from getting your hands on them. They decide to kill Mary to avoid any witnesses, but all of a sudden, she super speeds over to them and grabs their guns away, much to her own surprise. Also, is she being possessed by the Thing? Why is her hair all sticking up? The two are suddenly outside next to the road, even them confused about just what the hell happened. Andrea Zakara is in a car next to them and confirms that, indeed, she ordered them to kill Maxwell. Okay, that confirms it. She is an idiot. She then kills her henchman for not getting his notes. You know, lady, I'm seeing less and less incentive for people to start working for your company to begin with. I don't think free donuts in the break room are gonna make up for this. Maxwell is dying, and per narrative rule, he has a friggin' speech prepared as he bleeds out. Don't weep for me, Mary. A miracle happened. The hummingbird's DNA gave you superhuman speed.
It didn't last. I'm tired again, can hardly move.
Your power is like a battery. It'll need recharging after each use. I know this because I'm also a biologist and a chemist. Your one weakness will always be fatigue, but your speed will return after you've rested. You've also got to eat your weight in nectar every day, just FYI. Never let anyone learn of your power. They'll all want your secret. Scientists, crime lords, the military, they'll never stop hounding you. They'll want your help re-establishing the space program. You mustn't do it! And thus her father dies. And seriously, this is the fourth of these with dead loved ones. Did Stan think that was just a thing with all of DC's heroes? The only one who doesn't have a dead parent is Superman, but even then, for all we know, they could have been dead before the comic started. Back over to Stealth, they finally figured out the time travel machine, demonstrating it by having a dog travel back in time and pick up a bone before it was taken off the ground and held by Zakara. And when the dog returns, the bone is no longer in her hand because it was taken by the dog in the past. Even though they clearly remember it happening, it still happened from their own perspective, except it couldn't have because the past was altered and...
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
You know, I made an entire video once about time travel being more like a yarn ball, so I guess that's the theory they're operating with in this comic. Because otherwise, what the hell? In any case, one of the henchmen tries to warn her about something.
Spare me your warnings while I savor our triumph.
Are you an idiot?
We cut over to Mary as she monologues to herself at her father's headstone. He apparently left her a whole ton of money, of course, and she promises to train in her powers and make a new life for herself. She goes to a deserted studio lot to start training. The place is shut down due to a cinematographer's strike. Although apparently the guards are on strike too, since they aren't around either. Testing her powers, she of course creates a sonic boom that trashes everything in her wake, is able to outrun an arrow, but what's more, she realizes that she ran faster than the speed of light when she actually saw herself start running again when she stopped. And because I met myself before I left, it means my speed let me travel back in time.
That means lunch won't be till yesterday.
It's too unreal. How do I deal with it? Well, I could travel back in time and save Dad's life, but nah.
Speaking of making the space-time continuum convulse and throw up, Stealth creates a bracelet control for their time travel, sending Zorgel back in time with it to steal $10 million from an armored car robbery that had occurred the previous week. The henchman again tries to warn her about it.
Be silent, lest I turn you over to Zorgel.
Hey, could we travel back in time to when they were handing out brains and make sure you got one? As a reward for a job well done, Zorgel is brought to Zakara's private chambers for, well, you can see.
This is the time to speak as man and woman. You are man, and I am woman. Let's talk gender politics, baby.
But it was all just a ruse. She swipes the time travel watch off of him and then goes back in time, blowing up her house and killing Zorgel. I'd compare this to the Joker killing Bob in the Tim Burton movie, but at least the Joker is insane and angry. Zakara is just plain asinine, killing off a completely loyal minion who has shown himself as being one of the few people she can rely on. I've never seen anything like this. Everyone already obeys her. Why the hell did she have to do that? Anyway, back over to a far less stupid person. Mary is in a motel and deciding she needs to avenge her father's death. As such, she's decided to become a superhero. She goes out and buys a bunch of supplies. Good thing I know how to sew. I love how they had to justify Batman knowing how to sew by putting him in charge of a prison sewing machine, and here it's just, good thing I know how to do this thing I've never brought up before. She also decides that instead of a regular mask, she'll wear a motorcycle helmet.
I can glitz it up with colored nail polish.
And by glitz it up, she means do nothing to it, since the helmet is just a featureless white helmet aside from the orange visor. But one thing I didn't notice from the cover was that the rainbow behind her actually comes from a bunch of tassels attached to the back of her outfit. You'd think those would just end up slowing her down by catching wind and whatnot, but I've got to admit I do like that touch. But like last time, what I don't like is this stance. Instead of it being a bizarre pose that shows off her breasts and ass at the same time, as so often happens in comics, it's her left leg twisting itself to face a different direction while the rest of her body faces the reader. Ow. Back over to our incompetent villain, she kills off more of her troops to keep them from creating another time travel device, claiming that whatever warning they had for her was obviously fake, even though she never heard what the warning was. Oh, and as we see, Zorgel survived having a house explode on him, just to ratchet up Zakara's list of utter failures. Meanwhile, Mary decides to try to track down Stealth using the supposed notes that her father had, and heads back to her cottage. However, 3 stealth agents are already there, and just hanging out in front of the place waiting for her in their conspicuous Matrix trench coats and black sweaters. So that's how Zakara got people to work for her. They're just as dumb as her. Mary changes into the Flash faster than they can see. They shoot at her, but of course with her super speed she just plucks the bullets out of the air and sends them hurtling away. After beating up the goons, she naturally interrogates them for information. Just runs away. Huh. And we cut over to Zorgel storming through the streets of a city in tattered clothes. And aside from said tattered clothes, he's otherwise fine.
So the result of his complete immolation is just minor redness and irritation.
Yeah.
Zorgel shows up at headquarters, pissed off as all hell, but Zakara lays the charm on quickly, claiming his death was an accident and she was preparing to go back in time to rescue him. Zorgel, being just as much of a doofus as everyone else, buys it. She even says that Zorgel is now their second in command and is in charge while she goes scouting around the past to see what stuff she wants to steal. Which means the entire thing of her killing Zorgel was not only idiotic, but pointless too! Mary locates the headquarters of Stealth thanks to her dad's notes, but she's soon captured. They at first want to kill her, but Zorgal decides that they should wait for Zakara to return. When Mary overhears them outside her cell talking about wanting to hold the mayor and his staff hostage, she comes up with an escape plan. She starts pushing air out underneath the door, confusing the guards since there shouldn't be any ventilation in her cell. They open it up to take a peek, and thus the Flash zooms out and starts tying people up with a lengthy fire hose, punching out anyone else along the way. However, she stops to confront Zorgal, since he's the mini-boss and all, and tries to super speed hit him a bunch of times. However, even with super speed punches, the dude survived an explosion and being buried under a bunch of rocks and rubble, so he shrugs off her attack. However, she is able to maneuver around his own attacks and then electrocute him with a mop, bucket, and broken electrical wires. The true enemy of Stealth, the janitorial staff. She even implies that she killed the guy. What's with all of Stan's heroes being so bloodthirsty? Zakara teleports back, but the side effects of the time travel immediately kick in, what they were warning her about. Apparently, prolonged use of the time travel causes her to rapidly age until she falls over dead. And thus our brave hero defeated the villain by not doing anything to her. Well, okay, she defeated her organization, but given both were supposed to have the time travel ability, you'd think that would have played into their final confrontation.
The late Miss Zakara needed a special device to travel in time, but I can do it with my own natural speed. And because of my own altered DNA, I won't have to worry about aging as she did.
Hummingbirds are also known for pulling things out of their asses. And so our comic ends with Mary swearing to use her power to honor her father and to fight evil, while Reverend Harold P. Satan continues to not actually do anything, but say he'll totally do something at some point. This comic is... I don't know, it's kind of a mixed bag, but I think I do actually like it. I think a big part of why is the artwork. It's just so bright and colorful. This is the work of Kevin Maguire, who is especially excellent at facial expressions in his work, and we really get to see it shown here, with a wide range of emotions all across the board. The fight scenes are well handled, and the design for the Flash is refreshing in its more original take. The origin itself is not really all that special and doesn't make a lick of sense. We never learn what that green fog was, which admittedly has storytelling potential, but is unsatisfactory for a self-contained story. The villains are utter morons, defeated more by their own bottomless stupidity than the Flash coming in, but are still just dangerous enough that they need to be dealt with. I think the idea might have been that since the Flash in comics usually embraces the silly pseudoscience of superheroes more than other books, they just roll with it. It makes for a fun, if stupid, book. Since it'll probably be a while before we start looking at any other of Stan Lee's DC Universe, I guess I should give some final thoughts on this experiment based on the 4 books I reviewed. Here's the problem with them as I see it. As I've stated before, the primary difference between Marvel and DC is in how their heroes generally are depicted. DC has heroes that you look up to, Marvel has heroes that you can relate to. And honestly, that's the biggest shortcoming with these reimaginings. Stan just doesn't write larger-than-life, heroically inspiring characters like Superman or Wonder Woman. Batman was probably the best one because he did reimagine Batman under that same kind of situation. A black teen, downtrodden and unfairly accused of a crime, sure it wasn't racially motivated, but still, rebuilding himself after prison and becoming a self-made fighter for justice. That is relatable. Wonder Woman was okay in that department, but it didn't emphasize enough Maria dealing with extraordinary things outside of her normal control. Her dad died, and then she just kind of forgot about him. Hell, same thing happened with Superman. His girlfriend's murder is built up as something significant to the character, and then she's pretty much discarded. No time is spent mourning the dead. Death shouldn't be pulled like this just for dramatic effect. It needs to have a consequence. Sure, I called Liella's death a fridging, but it's more just a complete waste since it doesn't even motivate Superman. As I keep joking, he just wants us to make our damn space program. The point is that Lee's strength as a writer, even with his goofy Silver Age over-expository and purple prose-laced writing style, is in creating characters who are relatable to the audience. When he tries to write beings with godlike powers, beings that are supposed to be paragons of our greatest virtues, it just falls flat. The Flash had the potential of being just as good as Batman, but there's less of an arc for Mary's character. She just experiences tragedy and has to deal with the consequences of it. Still, she's relatable in that regard, so it really does help make her likable for the readers and want to see where her adventures take her. Next time, we return to Patreon-sponsored reviews with, well, something else I never thought we'd see around here: Super Sentai. Face front, true believers, we're talking about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers source material next time.